How you getting on? How you really getting on deep inside? What are you thinking about? You thinking about boys, girls? What are you doing? What are you doing? No, come here. How are you? Sorry about that. How are you doing? Are you well? You well? You well, beloved? You well? Are you bloody can't well? Oh my god. See, people think they're being. I still get messages, instas. This is an obvious one. You know, people might say, "Oh, Tony can't do well." You know, if I don't know, maybe do post a picture of me doing something. The bread. I couldn't get the bread. The bread didn't rise. You know, they might say, "Oh, Tony can't prove well." you know, the bread didn't prove. And people think they're being very original, but I've been hearing that shit, man. I'm an old hat. I'm an old fucking tricolor. As such an old hat am I that I've been around the block, and I heard that for years. People saying Tony can't. Remember one time I heard it. We're in the choir in school. I don't know. I'm speaking like an interrailing student, but I was in the choir in primary school, and I was in choir B. Right, there was choir A and there was choir B. Choir A was allowed to sing. You know, choir A were like, "Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angels' voices." You know, you're desperate here to hear it. He's, "Oh, night divine." I blew it, which is why I was in choir B. The difference was choir B, you had to hum. So I'd be like, but not even that loud, because I was in the back row of choir B. The front row could be like, they're adding the bass, but there was volume levels. Volume, I never said that before, like that, to the choir B. I was in the back row, choir B. So I was like, oh, here they are. Shut up! You're trying to fucking hum. Sorry. So I was in the back row of choir B. So someone did say to me then, Tony, well, I guess you can call you, well, they didn't even preface it with a little jolly, well, I guess they could call you, because kids aren't as witty as that. They just said, yeah, Tony can't sing well. They're quick, they're quippy, unlike us meandering around. But us adults, so they said Tony can't sing well, but I'd even heard it a million times by then, So if you think you're being original, I shouldn't even open myself up for this, but if you think you're being original on Insta with a can't blank well, man, as I said, you can call me Nelson's hat in the Greenwich Maritime Museum in London, because I'm such an old hat at being. I'm not even using that term right. But I've been around the block. And surprisingly, I didn't get a lot of cunt wells. Sorry for swearing, as you know. As you might not know, I'm not swearing in 2022. That's my New Year's resolution. I will not be swearing at all in the year 2022. But I need to explain this. I need to swear a little bit. I surprisingly didn't get a lot of cunt wells. And I wouldn't mind cunt well, I take the word cunt as a term of endearment, like the Glaswegians do, or an Australian, What are you doing there, you little cunt? Where I come from, that's a term of endearment. So, no, I'm not offended at all. What are you looking in my window for, you dirty little cunt? It's actually, he's just playfully enticing me to staring at his window. He must just be from Australia and has lost his accent recently. But when you think you haven't, you're seeing something original. Terry has been coming out with some. Oh my God, she showed me I don't know if you've seen Mark Rober. Mark Rober's like a scientist on YouTube, massive YouTuber. You've probably seen him. And he came up with his glitter bomb. He kept having things stolen from his porch. So he's basically made this glitter bomb that has various phones and recording equipment, sprays fart spray. So if someone steals it, lifts up the box, it records everything, sprays glitter everywhere, sprays fart spray. She showed me a video yesterday. And I was like, oh my God, look at this glitter thing. It's called glitter bomb. And I was like, I laughed my ass off at her. I was like, yeah. And look at this. This is Charlie bit my finger. Where have you been living? What? And she showed it to me on Facebook videos as well. She's the oldest shit I've ever seen in my life. Look at this. Ha, ha, ha. I laughed my ass off at her. I like to do that sometimes because she's a vastly more intelligent person than I am. So the times where there's something that I know and she doesn't, I get to just, oh my God, I love it. I pat her on the head. And I want to put a big cone on her head, like a Pet Shop Boy, dunce, like a Kirsten. Anyway, what was I saying? Something about cunts. That's not me swearing. That's just me trying to remember my place. Yeah, I think just old shit. I don't know what I was talking about. But anyway, look, I'm an old hat at being called can't do well. And people think they're being original. That's what I was saying. People think they're being original with can't bloody do well or anything like that. And I know the feeling. I know but you can't. Look, if you, unless you're a vastly intelligent and highly witty person, if you think something's too obvious, it is. It's like the time that I met a girl when I was in Cologne, Germany. And her name was L'Oreal. And what do you think I did? Well, I've talked about this in the pod before. What do you think I did? What's the most obvious thing you can do? And the chat was going well. I probably could have lost my virginity with her. I wasn't a frigid at this stage, actually. But what do you what's the obvious thing you'd say to someone called L'Oreal? And I said it to her. And I don't know if there's anything that stings my heart more frequently. I'm thinking, I said, well, and L'Oreal, by the way, I just want to say, you're worth it. It honestly, like, it was as if I said a racial slur. It was as if I revealed that I just murdered someone. And by the way, L'Oreal, I have 20 bodies under my floorboards. It would have been the exact same as me saying, you're worth it. It was, oh no. Any goodwill has been sucked out of the earth right now. It's just it's a horrible world. There's a comet coming to kill us all. That was the kind of reaction. Oh my God, I can't believe you went for it. We were having such a good time. So if you think, how has no one ever said that before? That's what you learn in improv. You learn not to go to A to B thinking. You learn to go from A to C to D in some cases. Really oddball stuff thinking. Don't go to the the low hanging fruit. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was devastating. So how did I get onto that? Yeah, that's when I went to Cologne in Germany as part of World Youth Day, which I've talked about before. When I went to go see the Pope, my friends had gone to Zambia the year before, and I wanted to go to Zambia. I wanted to go to Zambia with my best friends. We were an inseparable group in Art School Reach, and we all wanted to go to Zambia. And of the four of us, 3 of us went to go, and I was excluded. I was excluded kind of on the terms because I would take the mick a little bit. Take the mick out as a bunch of Zambians, as if I have class. I wasn't going to take the mick, but it would have seemed like I was going to, I would never. But so I wasn't allowed to go. So I was kind of like, and I tell you, there's no bigger motivator than spite. And so I found out that the Dublin diocese, the Marino Dublin diocese, were going to World Youth Day. A bunch of like-minded cool kids like me who love Christ. A bunch of legends like me who stick our tongue out for the Eucharist and don't feel weird about it, So I decided. So I said, I went in. I was like, I want to go to Cologne, Germany, as part of World Youth Day. And so we went to go see the Pope. Unfortunately, though, this was like the Pope unfortunately died, and so we had to get we're like, we don't even know who we're going to go see now. It's like, oh, what? He cancelled? He's dead. JP2's dead. So we ended up having to see Ratzinger. And even though he was a new guy that no one even knew anything about, apart from the fact that he was a Nazi as a boy, that even though it wasn't even a good Pope, an impressive Pope, the bloody Italians skipped the queue, and we ended up having to watch him from the bushes. And he had a bunch of gormless Irish parishioners being like, so sorry guys, the Italians seem to have just taken our spots, so can we just back behind them, walking us into we're standing in thorn bushes, a million miles away from the Pope, couldn't see it fucking anything. Shite Pope as well. And that's when I met L'Oreal, whose hair was only okay. I'd say that was probably a burden. It'd be like a guy being called, Johnny Buffstein, and him being quite feeble and meek. But I shouldn't have. You just don't go for that. like someone's called Beyonce, you know. Well, they shouldn't be called Beyonce. You know what I mean? You can't just be calling someone Beyonce after the fact. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, I do, but I want to stop talking about that now. Just a bit of riffing on my name. Just where does he come up with the stuff? Chap's talking about his name. Now he's talking about fucking the Pope. No, I'm going to be talking about the Young Scientist competition today. I am going to be giving you some top inventions and studies that if you're a young child, you shouldn't be listening to this, although maybe you can now that I'm not swearing anymore. Some top tips for winning the Young Scientist competition on this Tony Cantwell shit show. This Tony Cantwell shit show. Lovely stuff there. So come here to me. Let me talk to you about the Young Scientist competition. I was in the Young Scientist competition. Unfortunately, I didn't win. Didn't even place. My mate Dara, who was, an amateur scientist, liked to light things on fire. That's probably the full extent. But he was a smart dude and very good at computers. He was obsessed with the idea that carbon dioxide and the amount of students in a room was affecting our brain capacity. Because he was actually, to be fair, in the same class as me. Remember I told you the story about the kid in my class who, when we had there was 42 in my class, then another 20 odd from another class, and we were all singing during winter, and the radiators were turned up. And then one of the kids fainted and smashed his head off the radiator, and then started to scream. It was like, ah! And the teacher was trying to pick him up, and he was so out of it and hallucinating that he didn't even know who the teacher was. And he was like, I'm all right, mister. And you could hear him going down the road, unable to walk down the corridor. And you could hear him being like, the cheese. Like he was in a land of cheese. I've talked about this. So after that, Dara kind of had it in his head being like, there's too many, it's too many kids in the class, and you need ventilation is key. So he was wondering if, having too many people in a class would affect the actual oxygen level of the class, and what kind of reaction that would have to to your ability to focus. So there was tests carried out. I think all I did was kind of hand out paper, but it was kind of like very rudimentary test, but with a kind of weighted score system, but simple tasks that you just had to kind of focus to do, right, and write them all down. So there was done with 20 people in a class, 40 people in a class, 60 people in a class, and then with the same size classroom. And based on that, that being kind of the main factor of how many people in the class, how much you were able to concentrate. I mean, it didn't win. There was probably other factors. There was probably a bit more excitement levels in the class. You know what I mean? We did actually measure the amount of carbon dioxide. I don't fucking know. Monoxide? Probably not. In the class. And we did see a very light correlation between that level of the drop-off of concentration and the rise in carbon dioxide. But we did kind of fudge numbers a little bit, right? Sorry, RDS, or whoever it is, ESAT Digifone, or whoever's sponsoring. Sorry, guys, okay? We fudged the numbers, okay? We wanted to get our hole, all right? Anything to get that sweet, sweet scientist hole. So, we fudged the numbers to go to the Young Scientist competition. Anyway, it was also the same Young Scientist that I almost, actually, because I was a frigid at it, and I almost lost my my virginity at it when a girl came over to me when I was queuing up for a big curry chip in the cafeteria, and a girl came over to me and was like, "Hey, do you see my mate over there? She likes you. Do you want to meet her?" And I said, why does she want to meet me? And then I dropped my tray and I ran out of the building, the whole building. I was standing at the old fucking canal out in Paul's Bridge. After, this is before I was, a sexual magnet that I am now, a sexual, specimen. This is when I was, but it's mad. Like at my hottest, I had a V and everything, had big luscious pillowy lips. And a tight pink butt, I had like a V, I had like a definition in my body, and I had pretty good skin. I didn't really suffer from much acne. Just a good looking guy with kind of hot. I'm not fucking looking at myself in the mirror here, so so I'm going to drop that now. And I ran out of the building. So it was a fairly momentous. Also, it was actually the same day that I was interviewed by a young girls magazine on how to pursue women as a child. I mean, he didn't like come over to me and be like, "You strike me as a very successful man with the ladies." I just saw him with the microphone, and I was like, "What you need? What can I? What look? What? How? Shut up for a second. Can I get attention here? How can I record something that'll be heard and seen by people?" Whenever there was a camera or a mic or anything like that, I'd be on it. I'd be on it like white on rice. If there was someone just like a roving reporter going around, I would ruin. Come here to me, look at me. Ruin your shot if you're coming just to be like, "We're here, the young scientists, and look, this is the next generation of young pluckies." So you'd be me there to waving in the background, yeah, just waving, jumping up and down, pulling my top over my head, yeah, any way to get attention, and then I'd be like. Me and Joe be like watching it later on the news. I'm like, "Do you think we're going to be on the news?" And watching it later and seeing us wait. We went to a jobs fair that was in Croke Park. Honestly, we ruined this guy. But he was a real coward. A bunch of kids. He didn't even tell us to stop. You know what I mean? What a coward. We kept ruining his shot, this roving reporter for TV3. It was TV3 at the time. And he was like, "We're here at the jobs fair. The next generation of employee." And we're like, shouting and waving a shot. And then he eventually was like, "For fuck's sake." And he moved his stuff and he left. And was like, "I think we have what we need." We were standing by. We saw it there later on, us waving. He had to use the shot of us waving. He couldn't just say to us, "Why, you didn't look tough." I was a chubby kid with glasses. And he can't even tell me just to, "Sorry, would you not stand in front of my shot?" Because I was a bigger coward than him. What a coward this guy was. Anyway, so this guy was walking around, the young scientist, and he had a microphone, and he's working for whatever, this girly mag, the kind of magazine the young girls and pedophiles buy, So I was like, "What's the crack? What's the microphone? What can I do for you to get attention?" And he was like, "All right, well, like I work for, girlymag.com, pedorag.ie, and and I am interviewing young fellas because this is the year 2001, and the idea of young people being gay is still a distant fantasy, and we live in a gender normative world. So I'm assuming you're a man, which means that you're straight and you like girls. How boys go about pursuing women?" Essentially, he was asking. And so I, cracked my knuckles, and I was like, let me fucking tell you now. As a frigid, I have to tell you exactly what you need to do. Oh my God. Well, you need to, and this is what I said, and look, I don't like the term friend zone, right? Because I think it kind of dictates that that there's something, that there's something inevitable about the sexual kind of end of a relationship or something like that, or like the sexual part is the only true end of a relationship with someone else, or you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't like a platonic relationship is somehow not the final form of this thing. You know what I mean? But if there was someone to write a book, or at least a pedorag.ie article on how to be permanently in the friend zone, it was me. And so I said to him, "Yeah, we need to do is you need to become best friends with the person that you fancy." You need to become best friends with the person that you fancy, and then over time, hopefully. There's a lot riding on this. Hope, especially a lot, right? Hopefully they see that you're a person that they want to be with, right? That's what I said, and that's bad. That's bad advice. That's bad advice. Not to say that you need to view every. Yeah. I've already said my piece on that. So, but then I remember reading, pedorag.ie, and I saw the magazine, because my mate Aidan was also featured in it, and there was a picture of him and some, bit of advice that he gave, and then was my name, and there was no picture, and I was like, oh God, because I know he only spoke to me because I was probably the most eager. I certainly wasn't the hottest boy in, at the Young Scientist competition, but I certainly was the most eager to be featured in pedorag.ie, and there was no picture. But then when I read how he had misquoted me, I was quite relieved. But it did still have my name, and it had Tony Cantwell, 13, Artsco Reach. What you need to do is weasel your way in as their best friend, and then wear them down over time. This is what it said, attributed to me, a 13-year-old boy, and wear them down over time. and only then will you conquest, So it was quite, even with that, I was like, I still wouldn't mind a picture of me in there. Look, So anyway, it was a very busy and momentous Young Scientist. But I feel for the young fellas and the young ones in this year's Young Scientist because it's gone virtual. And I think for a lot of people, it might be their first time driving up to Dublin, staying in the juries or whatever it is for the week, and meeting people, actually physically like shifting, getting the shift for the first time. A lot of little meek boys, who are about to have their mind blown by some rocker in fishnets who's obsessed with fucking Naruto or whatever. You know what I mean? That sort of shit I'm talking about. All those kind of things that that side of meeting. You know what I mean? Not just the boys with the frosted tips and the O'Neills. Other people have to get to meet too, and it was the perfect time for that. Not for me, of course, who famously ran out onto the canal, but I've already said that. So I feel for them, But I've always had a kinship with those young losers, So what I've done this week, because Ben Clifford, associate producer of the pod, turned me on to the fact that it is going to be virtual this year. So I'd like to if it's going to be virtual, right? I wouldn't mind throwing my hat in the ring here as well and submitting some of my ideas for potential science experiments for the Young Scientist competition. So I have a few here that I'm going to submit. And you can tell me what you think of these. These are just some ideas. Or maybe, do you know what? If you're planning on going next year, maybe you're a young Zoomer, which maybe is my demographic now that I don't swear for 2022. If you're a young Zoomer, maybe some of these ideas, like the one that I gave to my mate Joe about the industrialization of spider silk, you can use these ideas. These are up for you if you want. Okay. So the first one I have is it's an invention. Most of these are inventions. Some of them are. All right, this is the AI affirmation bot, right? It's an AI that gives you positive affirmations. Kind of summarizes, you could be shiting on at the end of the day, so it's twofold, right? You can shine on at the end of the day, so you have someone to talk to, and then what it does is it kind of reinterprets what you've said and paints it in a positive light, right? So it takes all the things you say and then it says it back to you, but in positive, present, affirmative way, right? Studies have shown that if you talk in the present tense, I am, I have, rather than I will or I want to, you see more positive effects from that. And it can enhance your mood. So you're able to unload onto someone, and then it's basically puts a positive spin on everything that you say, right? I think this is a level of code that even I could come up with, because I'm constantly annoying my wife with trying to put a positive spin on stuff when she just wants to be heard. More on that in a second. So say if you're like unloading onto the AI bot and you're like, oh, I had a bad day. I was late for work, which really upset me. And, I think my boss is annoyed. Then I didn't really do much for the day. I ate poorly, right? Then I was pretty much just browsing videos online on YouTube of watching people fix old fucking Game Boys all day, right? Then I had a big old wank and I shouldn't have had a wank. And then I don't know, I got drenched in the rain, right? The AI formation bot would say, punctuality is so important for you. Hence the negative reaction to when you are late. Because you were late and you were upset by it. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that's a nice spin. Yeah, but what about the junk food? That you are an epicurious fellow. You love the finer things in life. That's why people love you. Okay, yeah, I suppose I do. And then it'd be like, oh, but I did waste the day. I was supposed to be working. I ended up watching fucking Game Boy restoration videos. I love that you are such a technically gifted man, and you like to see things perfect. Well, I suppose I do. Yeah. And what about the wank? You have a lust and unbridled passion that anyone would kill for. Something like that. You know what I mean? And then it's kind of like, no, do you know what? It's not that I'm lazy, late, waster. It's that I have an emotional reaction to being on time, which means that I can improve, I do love the finer things in life. I am quite technically interested and would love to pursue that as a future career. Maybe just have a pastime where I fix up and maybe get a soldering iron, maybe fix up some old bits. And I've got a passion that I'm currently channeling into pornography that I could channel into something else. So that's the AI formation bot. Okay. But there is, you can't obviously be that so forgiving of yourself. The next one is a study, right? Which I call, and again, these are all up for grabs. This is called "The Fine Female Feline is a Flirty Friend of Mine." And what this study theorizes is the more a human being resembles in appearance a cat, a feline, for being scientists, the more people tend to find that more attractive. Okay, so and either genetically because of cat-like cheekbones, cute little button nose, or big eyes, or or artificially with things like cat eye makeup, that sort of thing. Embedded whiskers. That's maybe too far, which we'll talk about in a second. How you can get too far. So 100 people are studied, and you take 2 people, whatever the sexual orientation is, maybe 200 people, whatever their sexual orientation is, right? You show them a bland looking person, right, and gradually change features on them, right? So you're kind of getting a general ranking of how attractive they think this person is, and then you might kind of alter the photo with kind of like little cheekbones, maybe bigger eyes, maybe a little skinnier pink nose, and then further you go along, maybe add just a bit of fur, a light smattering of fur on the person's face, fangs, like a little sharper teeth, But see, the thing is, I think eventually you do get to what I'm anticipating is going to be a bit of an offshoot like this, which would be the fur canny valley. Now, the fur canny valley is basically how attractive you can turn a woman into a cat, essentially, before it gets before you get too uncomfortable, before it's like, proper whiskers on the label kind of looking woman, if you even want to call her that anymore. So I believe that light features, altered, people would, I do believe most people, and I think you're just not thinking about it, and I think you're making me out to be a freak. You're making me out to be like Dr. Moreau, Marlon Brando, with a big fan, right? With a lot of sunblock on my face. You're making me out to be like that, but I think you're just not ready to kind of. So this would be great for me. This would be great for me and the whole CCF community if we could just get a lot of people to agree. Well, look, on a what would you call it, blind test, 78% of people's ideal woman has cat eyes, raised cheekbones, and a little button nose. And I'm not saying that those are the factors that I look for in a woman, but I do think that women who look more like a cat tend to be more attractive. And luckily, most Irish women do look like cats. All right, so that's the fine female feline is a flirty friend of mine, attractiveness and scale, and the pursuit of the fur canny valley. So this next one is an invention, and it's for bloody blokes, or maybe it's for anyone really. It's basically a shock collar for the person in a relationship that when they're told a problem by their partner, they look to immediately solve the problem. Okay, so your partner might be like, "Oh, look, I just did this stupid thing in work and I'm just a bit down about it. Look, it's nothing." And I'm like, "Well, do you know you could go in next morning and you can probably email like, ow, They're not looking for that. They're a smart, intelligent person. They know how to solve. They're just really just looking for you. So it's a collar I call "Just Leashin' to Me." Just leashin' to me. And it's for, I could definitely use it. I'd probably break it with my gargantuanly thick neck. But it is something that I certainly have needed a lot of the time, where I have a tendency to try and problem solve. Because I want, it's with the best intentions. I'm trying to solve sort of Terry's. I'm trying to be like, oh, well, that's okay. But what it can come across as is I'm not listening, you need to do what that is, look, don't worry about it. It's not validating. It's not entirely validating the emotions of the person. So you might have a partner. You might be this person. You might need the "Just Leashin' to Me" collar, Well, what you could do is, So that's a collar for just people who are really trying to help. Piss hairdryer. Look, this isn't for warming your piss. It's for getting the bloody stuff off the seat, okay? Oh my God! Look, I'm not someone who pisses on the seat unless I'm trying to assert myself, and I know there's a little cook about to come into the urinal after me, or the toilet after me. No, but if I'm pissing, if I see piss on a seat, I was talking about this with Frankie on Meditations for the Anxious Minds podcast. We were talking about seeing a bit of piss in your seat. I think there's a lot of blame be thrown around, like piss, with who pissed on the seat. And when you walk out of a stall, and then someone's coming in, you're like, this fucker's going to think I pissed on the seat. And God forbid it's someone you know, in which case, you don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation. So I think what should happen is all toilet seats should have a Dyson Airblade above the rim and should go after you get up, and we'll just spray the piss off the end of the seat so that every time you're finished. And also you can maybe even turn that little sucker on while you're sitting down. Maybe warm up your little tush, warm up your dangling bollocks. I'm not swearing for 2022. But so that's piss, the piss hairdryer. You have it on the seat, and that way you leave and they hear you leaving, and they say, and it just gets rid of this onus who pissed on the seat, and it's a nice little warm one for your little tush. All right, this next one I actually think has legs, right? This one actually has legs. I remember I've said it on the pod before, but my most ever sales moment was when I was on the phone with some dude, and I said, Michael, we were on the phone last week. You said the deal had legs. My question to you today is, are they still walking? And he said, Tony, look, absolutely, they're walking all the way to the bank. And we were talking in real sales lingo, which I loved. But I don't know what came over me. Anyway, come here. This one I think has legs. Are they still walking? You be the judge. This is a study on. Okay, so look, I've talked about the Kinsey scale before, right? This isn't necessarily using that, right? If we look at this just as a general, this is totally oversimplified, right? And I'm not looking to be flippant about sexual orientation, but this is just a theory, right? You have attractions on various genders, right? So to completely oversimplify sexual orientation, right? On the scale, say if 1, right, is completely heterosexual, right? No interest in having a homosexual encounter or relationship. And 5 is homosexual, very little, have no interest whatsoever in having a heterosexual, incident, sexual, whatever. They don't want to be getting involved with anyone of the opposite sex, right? And then, just for the sake, let them have loads of space in here. 3, 4, and 5, right there in the middle. That's all bisexual of various orientation. 1 would be more hetero, 1 would be more homo, but the 3, 1 is completely hetero, 2, 3, 4 is just all the boys having a fucking wonderful time in there, and then the 5s is just straight homo, right? So that's still a list, okay? That's still people having a sexual interest, sexual desires to someone. So, but the key is they all are sexually active and have a sexual interest, right? There is also asexuals who have very little to no sexual interest, right? This is a completely different scale I'm talking about here, right? Regardless of gender. So those who have a minimal to zero interest in sex are asexuals. So what about the scale? Where's from asexual being 1, no interest whatsoever, and then maybe 4 or 5 are all the people I just mentioned who have, across genders, various sexual activities. I want to know what is going on with the 2s and the 3s. Do you know what I'm saying? And the 1 is asexual and 4 or 5 are all the people I mentioned. What's going on with the 2s and 3s? And could you potentially look at classifying the varying degrees of attraction that people actually have? From none whatsoever to maybe the 2s, if I may coin the term, a cuddle sexual. And that's not to, again, this is no, they could be they could be gay, they could be, they could be heterosexual, they could be bi, cuddles or cuddies, as I'm calling them, the 2s. Is there scope to explore the realm of the 2s and the 3s? And could you say, for example, could I, for example, show up to my brother's wedding as a cuddie with Jason Momoa, my boyfriend, in this cuddie relationship, right? So yes, we are homosexuals, but we're cuddies, and we cuddle, and he spoons me, and neither of us get erections from it. Could I be like, this is my boyfriend, Jason Momoa, we're cuddies. we're practicing cuddies, consensual cuddies. Just to, maybe that even appeals to you. Maybe the idea of getting up to the 4 or 5. Maybe you're more of a 2. Maybe even a cuddy is a 3, and maybe 2 is holding hands. Maybe 2 is, But what's more, if sex is off the table and gender doesn't really come into it, and we're only cuddling. And again, I'm not trying to be flippant at all here. I'm just trying to, understand. If there's no kind of power imbalance because there's no real sex involved, there's no way of really duping anyone. It's totally consensual. There's no power imbalance here. Could I, for example, as a practicing cuddy, and again, not trying to be flippant, but could I say on just the scale of physical intimacy, if I don't identify as someone who wants to fully have full sexual activities, if I'm a 2 or a 3 cuddy, right, could I say, and there's no power imbalance, could I say this dog's my boyfriend? This dog is my boyfriend. We're cuddies. We're 2 cuddies. Have I lost you? Have I lost you now already? This is where I lost Terry. I had Terry up to this point as well. Could I say this dog's my boyfriend? Could I say this magnificent Maine Coon cat, this stunning woman, and I are looking to buy a new home together? We're cuddies. And we want Bank of Ireland to back Brave on this one. This cat. Could we be where I'm kind of just planting these little, but what's going on in the 2s and 3s of the A to full hetero, bi, or homosexual, if you're, and is there scales within that? That's just what I'm, So now I lost Terry on the dog thing. She says because a dog has a symbiotic relationship that I have to feed the dog, that there is actually a power imbalance, which but I'm not, it sounds creepy. I'm not going to cuddle the fucking thing, But I wouldn't mind bringing it to my brother's wedding. My brother's not getting married, but I'm just saying if I, sometimes you have to have a stand-in, and that's your person, but you don't want to, you know what I mean? Is there scope maybe on a 1.5, me and Jordan being together and just playing Warzone together? You know what I mean? And I get to bring him to my brother's wedding and Christmas. Anyway, listen, this is the next one. We're thinking about. Hey guys, you heard of Fash In, right? What about Fash Bin? Clothes you can bin. So this is one for the parents here. Look, if you're a working parent, you likely have a pile of clothes that have poo-poo on them that are stuffed in beside your washing machine that you'll wash eventually, all right? I say why? Bin it with biodegradable baby clothes, okay? The same sort of fabric that you have from those kind of faux plastic super value bags, like those biodegradable rubber gloves. So it's like that material. And now you put baby clothes, right? So you can save the earth, cut down on washing, while making your child look like an absolute Berghain latex freak, and and then you just, poo-poo, whatever, bin the whole lot. Bin the whole fucking lot. Do you know what I mean? Enough of this building a big pile of stinky poo-poo clothes beside your washing machine. And also, I would say, and I will say, and what about, so that's for the baby clothes, but what about this as well? A compostable t-shirt for adults made of the same material. And it also comes with a big thick black marker, so you can just write a big slogan on it that day. Something hilarious, sit on it, save cheap cans, fuck the doll, something like that, something relevant. Because I often find when I go on Twitter, by the time I found out about a new meme or a slogan, it's already passé, right? If you're not posting about it by 10 a.m., it's going to be passé. So, like say if it gets to 11:30 and you haven't made a joke about the time Stephen Donnelly gave Tony Houlihan a thumbs up in a WhatsApp message, which for some reason people thought was, I don't know, I'm not trying to bring up old memes from 2020, but you could be on that. You could have the thumb emoji meme that morning on your t-shirt. Do you know what I mean? You're being contemporary, and then do you know what's great? You've worn a meme that day, it's become passé, you can bin it. Compostable t-shirts for clothes. Norma Foley, you could say. Everyone's talking about Norma Foley, Bob Saget died as of today. You get a Bob Saget t-shirt on, and you're walking around Bob Saget, just saying. And also, everyone gets to see your nipples, which is also, a plus. Okay, this, all right, this next one is I shouldn't end with this one, but I'm ending with this idea. Drone bowl. Did I stammer? Drone bowl. The drone bowl. Droll It is or bone. Droll/bone is a drone bowl. Say you're playing the board games, right? Or poker or whatever it might be. Oftentimes the center of the table, no matter how big the table is the occupying space of the cards or the board or whatever it might be. And that's normally where, if you were sitting around having a chat, a big old bowl of popcorn would be there, right? Big old bowl of chips. If you're a card-carrying American, a big old bowl of crisps in the middle of the table. But what I found over Christmas playing games is that you know where to put the chips or the crisps. Sorry, I'm not crisps. We call them here in the Republic of Ireland. There's nowhere to put them, and what you're passing the bowl, it's disrupting the play. I say no more, and welcome to Drone Bowl, a bowl with 4 very highly powered fans that hovers above the very light plastic cards, right? And it hovers there, and then you can just reach above the table and get a chip or crisp. Fuck. No, I'm swearing. I'm not swearing ever again. But it also has a homing beacon, and it comes to the most hungry boy, the hungry human man, and it comes to you, and then you can just take it and eat it at the side. There needs to be a way of easily transferring in a hands-free way a bowl of crisps when you're playing a game around the table. Now, I did realize that is going to be a very... As soon as I realized that it would be actually for a card game, the fan's going to blow the cards away. I genuinely thought this was a great idea, and then I thought the fan's going to blow the cards away. But what about this 3D table, which I'm calling 3Dable? It's a table. Okay, we've been okay. Not having a go here, really, right? But we've been only messing around with 2 axis points of the table, right? The x-axis. Why have we never thought to move upwards with our tables? What is going on, guys? We have a table. We're playing games. What if we have the table, and on top of the table is another table, and on that table is your chips and your crisps, and your bifter paraphernalia like for rolling skins and stuff like that, all on the top table. Your glass of pop or whatever what have you, and then at the bottom under the table, and there's a light underneath the top table, is your game. So if you're hungry, stand up, bitch. Just stand up and go to the top table and eat from there. And then when you're ready, you can sit back down to the low table, and then that's where all the fun in the games are going to be. So it's kind of 2 ideas there. So it's kind of business downstairs, and then all the party upstairs, all the chips and the rolling paraphernalia. So you stand up to grab your bits, and then you sit down to enjoy them. That's the idea of the 3D table, which I'm calling 3Dable. So you've Droll and 3Dable. So I'm waiting for. I'm anticipating. I'm going to be submitting these into the virtual Young Scientist, and if they don't quite get in, I don't think I have enough time. These are up for grabs, especially 3Dable. Just put a fucking table on another table. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed my inventions and submissions for this year's Young Scientist. And if you see a little frigid boy walking around, just little bottle glasses and boots that are really big, just have a spare thought. You really should have been getting his whole this January. So my commiserations to all of my fellow freaks out there, all my fellow Todd Phillips's monsters, Gaga is out there. But your day will come, and feel free next year to submit my wonderful ideas. Thank you very much for listening. All the best. Bye-bye.
It's Tony Gilwell Shit Show.